People say love is blind, but I didn't know it could make you blind to betrayal. I gave him everything, even when I had to sleep hungry. But today, he doesn't even remember my name. I wasn't rich. I wasn't powerful. But I had something many people didn't. I had love. Pure, deep love for a man who had nothing but dreams. His name was Yusuf, and when he walked into my life, he painted my world with hope. We met in our local masjid. I was volunteering with a charity group, helping struggling students get their WAEC fees paid. Yusuf walked in quietly one day, head down, clothes worn. But his eyes, they carried stories. Stories of hardship, pain, and ambition. He was brilliant. So brilliant that our coordinator asked me to personally help him fill out his scholarship forms. That was how it began. I didn't just help him fill forms. I gave him everything I had. I sold my gold bangles to pay for his international passport. I skipped meals to send him data for his school applications. I stood by him like a pillar when everyone else laughed at his dreams. When the admission letter finally came from Canada, he cried. But I cried harder, because I had just finished using up all my savings for his visa application. People said I was stupid. My mother warned me, Zainab, if he truly loves you, let his actions show it, not just his sweet words. But love silenced the voice of reason. The night before he left, he held my hand and said, Wallahi, I'll come back for you. You're not just my love, you're my angel. I believed him. I believed every single word. But I didn't know I was funding my own heartbreak. He said he'd never forget me. But what he did next shattered my soul. Stay with me. Days turned into months, months into years, and I was still waiting for his return. But all I got was silence. The kind of silence that screams betrayal. Script: the day Yusuf boarded the plane, I stood at the airport gate with tears in my eyes, clutching my dua book. I whispered prayers over and over. Ya Allah, keep him safe. Bring him back to me. He turned back one last time before boarding, smiled and mouthed, I love you. That smile stayed with me for weeks. The first few weeks in Canada, he called almost daily. Short video calls, long voice notes, pictures of him studying, snow, lectures. He used to say, I can't wait to make you proud. I held on to those words like oxygen. Every time he called, I felt a new hope. I started planning a future. I browsed wedding dresses online. I imagined myself moving with him one day. I told my close friends, he's the one. He's my answered dua. Even when I was broke, I still sent him 5,000 Nigerian nairas from my NYSC allowance so he could eat. I fasted on Mondays and Thursdays, not just for spiritual reward, but to save money to support him when things were tough. But slowly, he began to change. The calls became less frequent. The voice notes stopped coming. My texts would remain unread for days. Then weeks. Yusuf, are you okay? No reply. Please just tell me if I've done anything wrong. Still nothing. I began to panic. I stayed up at night refreshing his social media. I saw his last scene on WhatsApp. He was online, but not replying me. I told myself, maybe he's stressed. Maybe school is overwhelming. But then, one day, I tried to call. It rang once, then, the number you are trying to reach is not available at the moment. I tried again. And again. Until my hands were shaking. Then, suddenly, the realization hit me, he had blocked me. The man I gave my everything to. The man I prayed to Hajjud for. The man I believed would come back and marry me. Blocked me. No warning. No explanation. Just cold silence. I collapsed on my sajada and wept. Not just for the pain, but for the years I would never get back. But that wasn't even the worst part. What I found out next nearly destroyed me. Don't leave me, this is just the beginning. When I saw her face, I froze. Not because she was beautiful, but because I knew instantly I was never part of his plan. I couldn't sleep for days after Yusuf blocked me. I refreshed his pages again and again. It became an obsession. Then one evening, my friend Amina rushed into my room, her phone shaking in her hands. "Zainab, please sit." I took the phone from her, confused and scared. It was his Facebook. Yusuf had posted pre-wedding photos. The caption read, "My forever starts now. Alhamdulillah." I stared. And stared. And stared. My ears started ringing. My body went cold. He was in a three-piece suit, standing next to a fair-skinned girl with straight hair and polished nails. Her gown shimmered. Her smile sparkled. She looked nothing like me. I didn't cry immediately. I just whispered, "Subhanallah," after everything. Amina sat beside me silently as I scrolled through the pictures. Dozens of them. Smiling. Holding hands. Traditional and white wedding shoots. No sign of pain. No sign of struggle. This man I loved, prayed for, and sacrificed for, was starting a new life like I never existed. I remembered the day he told me, "I love your deen. I love how you cover. I want someone who reminds me of Jannah." But now, he chose someone with perfect brows, lace frontal, and Western glam, the complete opposite of me. For the first time in my life, I questioned my worth. Was I not enough because I was darker? Because I wore niqab? Because I didn't look foreign enough? I stayed in bed for days. Ignored calls. Skipped salah. I couldn't eat. I couldn't breathe. I had planned my life around a man who was building his life without me. But what broke me the most wasn't that he married her, it was how he erased me from his life like I was a mistake. But Allah never forgets. They told me to be grateful that Allah saved me. But how do you thank Allah through heartbreak? When the news of Yusuf's marriage reached my family, everyone had a different reaction. My eldest sister hissed. "He was a user. At least now you can move on." My auntie said, "This is why I always told you to marry early. You were being too holy, waiting for him." Even the imam's wife told me, "Alhamdulillah. If he had stayed, he might have destroyed your future. Be grateful." Grateful? How do you show gratitude when the same hands that once lifted in dua are now too weak to even rise? I wasn't ungrateful to Allah. But I was broken in places that dua alone couldn't express. It wasn't just about a man. It was about trust. It was about the way I gave my all and got emptied. I started doubting everything. My decisions. My faith. Even my dreams. I wondered, was it a mistake to support him financially? Was I too naive? Too available? Too trusting? Each time I tried to heal, I'd hear another rumor. That he was now living in Canada. That his new wife came from a wealthy family. That he had called me a temporary help during his struggle. I couldn't recognize myself anymore. The girl who once smiled at sunrise and thanked Allah in sujud was now silently wishing night would never end. I felt used, thrown away, and humiliated. But one night, in the depth of my loneliness, I said something I hadn't said in a while. "Ya Allah, if this pain is what brings me closer to you, then don't waste it." And that night, I slept in peace for the first time in weeks. They called it heartbreak, but I was about to learn that heartbreak is just the beginning of a much deeper test. She stared at me like she knew me. And when she spoke, her words broke something in me I never thought still existed. Script: 6 months later, I was at the airport seeing off my younger brother. I wore a soft brown jilbab, minimal makeup, and held a small bag with his travel documents. As I stood in line to pay airport levies, I noticed a woman beside me. She was dressed in full glam, designer bag, curly weave, red lipstick. She kept looking at me, almost like she was trying to place my face. Then she smiled. Are you Zainab? My heart skipped. I nodded slowly. I'm Nafisa. Yusuf's wife. I froze. Completely. Before I could say anything, she whispered, I just want to say thank you for everything you did for him. Tears welled in my eyes, not from pain but shock. She continued, he never told me much, but I saw the receipts. The emails. I know who helped him get here. I was speechless. Then she said something I'll never forget, he told me once. Zainab deserved better. But I was too selfish to give it to her. My throat burned with emotion. I smiled bitterly. You're his wife now. That's all that matters. But before I could walk away, she grabbed my hand and said, I pray Allah sends you someone better. Someone who sees you and never lets you go. That night I cried. Not from heartbreak, but from healing, because sometimes Allah uses strangers to deliver closure, when the one who broke you never apologized. She was the woman he chose. But somehow, she became the woman who gave me peace. And from that moment, I knew, Allah was not done writing my story. When I placed my head on the prayer mat, I didn't ask for him to return. I asked Allah to remove the part of me that still waited for him. The night after I met Nafisa, I returned home with a strange calmness, but also a storm building inside me. I performed wudu slowly, deliberately, like I was washing away every trace of who I used to be. Then I stood for tahajjud. I didn't cry loudly. No words came out at first. Only sujud. Only silence. Only the sound of a heart cracking open to the only one who truly sees the shattered places. I didn't ask for Yusuf to come back. I didn't ask for revenge. I didn't even ask Allah to punish him. Instead I said, Ya Allah, if I have ever loved someone more than you, forgive me. If I have ever placed a person above my worship, correct me. And if I have been broken to be rebuilt, then make me stronger than I've ever been. That sujud turned into sobbing. My tears soaked the prayer mat. It felt like my soul was finally speaking, not to a man, not to the world, but to my Rab. For the first time since it all began, I felt something lift from my chest. The grief was still there, but it had a new companion now. Sabr, hope, and a quiet certainty that Allah does not waste the pain of his believing servants. That night, I didn't walk away with answers, but I walked away with Allah. And that was more healing than anything I had prayed for. I got a proposal, but my heart was still in chains. He was kind, religious, and serious about marriage, but my heart had forgotten how to trust again. A few weeks later, my mother approached me after far prayer. She said, someone asked for your hand in marriage. His name is Abdul Hakim. He's a Hafiz, working in tech. He asked around and said he wants a righteous woman. He chose you. I smiled, but my heart whispered something else. Can you love again? Can you trust again? The old me would have said yes instantly. The new me had questions, not for him, but for myself. Could I open my heart again? What if he used me too? What if he left too? Abdul Hakim was everything I prayed for before the heartbreak, soft-spoken, God-conscious, responsible. But my heart still wore invisible chains, tied to the memory of betrayal, fear, and abandonment. We agreed to meet in the presence of my wali. He greeted me with salam, lowered his gaze, and said, Sister Zainab, I know what you went through. I'm not here to fix you. Only Allah can. But I promise never to be the reason you break again. Those words hit me like wind through a closed window. I nodded. My eyes welled up. And I excused myself for a moment. In the bathroom, I looked at my reflection, and whispered, Ya Allah, is this you showing me that healing is possible? That love, after betrayal, is not haram? I didn't give my answer that day. Because sometimes, before you say Yes to a new beginning. You have to say goodbye to the version of yourself that was left behind. I was offered a beautiful future, but I had to choose whether I'd live in my past, or walk into something new, with Allah by my side. I stood in the same spot he walked away from me. But this time, I wasn't begging for answers. I was thanking Allah for saving me. Before giving Abdul Hakim my final answer, I did something strange. I went back to the airport. The exact terminal where Yusuf waved at me, with that fake smile, before he disappeared from my life. I sat on the same cold bench. I watched people crying, laughing, hugging, rushing. And I remembered how I stood in that same place once, hopeful, loyal, blinded. I remembered how I checked my phone every minute, praying for a text from him. I remembered how my breath caught in my throat when I realized I had been blocked. That version of me felt so far away now. But I could still feel her pain like it was yesterday. So I closed my eyes and whispered, Ya Allah. You took me away from a man who saw me as a ticket. And you led me back to you. Alhamdulillah for unanswered prayers. I realized something in that moment. Sometimes, the place of your greatest heartbreak becomes the place of your deepest gratitude. I stood up. Head high. Heart steady. And I walked out of that terminal. Not as the woman who was left behind, but as the woman Allah rescued. He left me to chase a visa. But Allah granted me a passport to something far greater, peace, purpose, and the beginning of my real story. Everyone congratulated me when I said yes. But deep down, I was still fighting a war the world couldn't see. After weeks of prayer, istikhara, and long talks with my heart, I said yes to Abdul Hakim. My mother cried tears of joy. My friends rejoiced. Even Nafisa hugged me like I had climbed a mountain. But me? I sat quietly that night, looking at myself and wondering, why am I still scared? I kept replaying the past. What if he changes too? What if he wakes up one day and says, "You're not enough"? What if I pour my soul again, and it breaks again? I tried to distract myself with wedding plans, with work, with Quran. But healing doesn't come just because the world claps for you. It comes when you clap for yourself, for surviving, for choosing faith over fear. Abdul Hakim would message me often, "I'm not rushing you. I know you're healing. I'm here whenever you're ready to walk beside me, not behind me." Subhanallah. He wasn't perfect. But he was patient. And that was something I hadn't experienced before. I still didn't feel ready. But maybe readiness isn't a feeling. Maybe it's a decision, to believe that Allah can write a better story, even if you're still carrying the ink stains of the old one. I said yes to him, but more importantly, I said yes to healing, to growth, to trusting Allah again, even if my heart was still trembling. Everyone was celebrating. But I was in my room, crying in sujud. The wedding was set. The preparations were in full swing. My aunties bustled around, giving orders. My younger cousins peeked at my dress and squealed in excitement. My mother had tears in her eyes, this time, tears of joy. But me? I was silent, watching it all, like I was standing in someone else's life. Because deep inside, I was scared. Not scared of marriage. Scared of failing again. That night, the night before the nikah, I shut my door quietly, turned off the lights and wrapped myself in my prayer cloth. And I fell into sujud. I cried like I hadn't in years. Tears soaked the prayer mat as my heart spilled open, Ya Allah. I was once betrayed. He used me for a visa. He threw me away like I was nothing. Ya Allah, what if this happens again? What if I lose myself again? But in the middle of my breakdown, a thought interrupted the pain. This is not your end. This is your rebirth. I cried harder, but this time with hope. I remembered every time Allah picked me up after that heartbreak. Every quiet moment where dua became my only language. I wasn't walking into this nikah as a woman who had been left. I was walking in as a woman who had been carried by Allah. I wasn't whole, but I was healed enough to trust again. Not in people, but in Allah's qadr. And that was enough. I said I accept with my lips, but inside, I was still putting myself back together. The nikah ceremony began with soft recitations. The imam's voice filled the air, the hall quiet, sacred. When they asked for my consent, I said the words clearly, I accept. And just like that, I was a wife. People cheered. My mother sobbed. The cameras flashed. The air was filled with perfume and prayers. But beneath my smile, I was still healing. Yes, I had moved forward. But no, I hadn't forgotten the man who once used me like a ladder and walked away. He didn't just break my heart. He broke my trust, in myself, in people, in the idea that I was worth staying for. And healing from that? It's not something that ends at accepted. It takes nights of whispered dua. It takes eyes swollen from late-night sujud. It takes rewriting the story you tell yourself. Because for a long time, I believed I was the problem. But now, I was beginning to believe I was the survivor. And my new husband, kind, patient, God-fearing, he held space for that journey. He didn't expect a perfect wife. He just expected a woman who hadn't given up on herself. And that's who I was trying to become. Yes, he used and abandoned me, but now, I'm with someone who sees my pain, honors it, and still chooses me. Not for papers. Not for gain. But for the soul I had rebuilt through every tear I cried in sujud. I thought the chapter was closed. But somehow, the past found a way back into my life. Marriage brought peace. My new husband, Yusuf, was everything I had prayed for. Gentle. Respectful. Quietly observant. He never rushed me to forget. He let me breathe. He let me heal. For the first time in a long while, I started laughing without guilt. Sleeping without tears. Dreaming, again. But life has a strange way of testing your peace. One Saturday afternoon, while I was sorting old documents, I saw something that made my hand tremble. A letter from the embassy. It was addressed to my maiden name. The name I hadn't used since my previous pain. The name tied to the man who abandoned me. Curious and confused, I opened it. It was an official update. Apparently, the man who had used me for a visa, the one who vanished after reaching abroad, was now under investigation for fraud. They needed a statement. My statement. My heart stopped. After all these months, I thought I had buried him in my past. But now, his name was in front of me again. And just like that, all the memories came flooding back, the late-night video calls where he pretended to care. The promises to bring me over after his papers cleared. The silence that followed once he got what he wanted. And worse. The realization that I was just a ticket to him. I sat on the floor for hours that day. Silent. Numb. Not because I still missed him, no. But because I realized something even deeper. I had never truly faced what he did to me. I had forgiven. I had moved on. But I never spoke my truth. And maybe, now was the time. Healing isn't always quiet. Sometimes it requires you to confront the very storm you once escaped, not to drown again, but to prove that now, you can walk on water. How do you confess a past so painful, you're ashamed to hear it out loud? The letter wouldn't stop staring at me. For 2 nights, I hid it in my drawer, but it felt like hiding a wound that was beginning to rot. Yusuf, my husband, was starting to notice. You've been distant, he said gently. Is everything okay? I wanted to say yes. I wanted to pretend. But a part of me whispered, if he truly loves you, he'll understand. And another voice, darker, more fearful, said, what if he doesn't? For the next morning, I sat beside him. The sky was still dark. The house was quiet. And my hands were shaking. I need to tell you something, I began. And his eyes, full of warmth, encouraged me to speak. I told him everything, from the moment I met the man I thought was my future, to the night he promised me a new life abroad. The rushed marriage. The visa process. The waiting. And then. The silence. The betrayal. The abandonment. My voice broke many times. But I kept going, not for pity, not for forgiveness, but because this was my truth. And I was finally ready to stop hiding it. When I finished, I looked at Yusuf, unable to breathe. Would he leave? Would he see me differently? But he didn't speak right away. He reached out, gently held my hand, and said the words that broke me again. I didn't marry your past. I married your heart. And that heart is brave. I couldn't hold back the tears. Because for the first time, I was no longer a prisoner of that painful past. I was a survivor. And I was loved. But deep down, I knew this wasn't the end. The embassy still awaited my statement. And that meant I had one more confrontation left. Not with my husband, but with the man who once used me, and thought I'd stay silent forever. YD for me we. Sometimes the courage to speak the truth doesn't just set you free, it reminds you of the strength you always had, even when you were broken. How do you write the truth, when your own memories feel like knives? I stared at the embassy's email again. Please provide a formal statement detailing your experience with Mr. A. They were giving me a chance to expose him. To let the law take its course. To warn others. To reclaim my voice. But with every word I tried to type, my hands trembled. Because this wasn't just a report. This was my pain, printed in black and white. This was every lie, every broken promise, every lonely night I cried myself to sleep, being brought to the surface again. Yusuf came and stood by my side. You don't have to rush, he whispered. But don't be afraid to speak your truth. His calm was my anchor. So I began, my name is Amina. I married Mr. A in good faith, believing in a shared future. He promised to take me with him abroad. He said we'd start a life together, but after using me to process his visa, he cut off all communication. I typed everything. No bitterness. Just facts. I was used as a stepping stone. I was left without explanation. No accountability. No closure. When I finally clicked send, I didn't feel victorious. I felt empty. But there was a quiet strength rising within that emptiness. A voice that whispered, you are no longer silent. You are no longer powerless. That night, as I closed my eyes, a strange calm embraced me. But little did I know. The next message I'd receive wouldn't come from the embassy. It would come from him. You can bury the past under silence, but when the winds of truth blow, the dust never settles. He broke me and vanished, now he returns, not with regret but with excuses. Script, it was past midnight when I saw the notification. My heart stopped. His name. His message. I froze. Hands cold. Thoughts racing. I clicked. Amina. I heard you reported me. Why would you do this to me after everything I did for you? My eyes widened. Everything he did for me. I kept reading. I never meant to hurt you. Things didn't work out. Life moved fast. You should have moved on by now. Tears welled up. Not because I was hurt again. But because of the sheer audacity. He didn't even say sorry. No remorse. No acknowledgement. Just a coward trying to rewrite the story to save his own skin. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the phone across the room, but instead, I wiped my tears. I picked up the phone. And for the first time since he left me stranded in the shadows of his lies, I replied. You didn't break me. You freed me. I don't report you out of hatred, I do it for the girl who might be your next victim. I survived you. And now. I stand for her. I hit send. And close that chapter, not in anger. Not in weakness. But in power. That night I didn't cry. I slept in peace. Because justice wasn't just in the embassy's hands. It was in mine too. Sometimes the strongest closure is choosing to speak, even when silence would be easier. You might be forgotten by people, but you are never forgotten by Allah. Weeks passed. The embassy took action. His visa was flagged. He tried to reach out again, this time with threats, fear, manipulation. But I didn't flinch. Because I wasn't the same Amina anymore. I was no longer a stepping stone in someone else's success. I was a believer rising from betrayal, clothed in dignity, protected by Allah. One day, I received a call, not from the embassy, but from someone I never expected. It was his mother. She was crying. I didn't raise him like this. I'm ashamed. I just want to tell you. I'm sorry, on behalf of our entire family. I froze. Tears escaped me. Not because of her apology, but because it reminded me that Allah sees everything. He sees the tears you cry alone. He hears the du'as you whisper in the dark. And even when the world turns away, He turns closer. That night, as I sat on my prayer mat, I didn't ask Allah for revenge. I asked Him for healing. For every woman abandoned after being used. For every soul broken and left in silence. For every believer who gave their heart in sincerity, and were repaid with betrayal. And I whispered a dua for you, the one watching this, Ya Allah, if they've ever been used, betrayed, or hurt, replace it with something better. Don't let their tears go to waste. Write for them a life of peace, honor, and a love that never fails, your love. Because I have tasted pain. But I have also tasted the sweetness of Allah's justice. And that is enough. If this story touched your heart, then don't leave without saying Ameen to this dua. Subscribe to this channel, because here, your pain becomes purpose, and your tears find meaning in the light of Allah. Used and abandoned is never the end of your story, it's where Allah begins rewriting it for something better. Ameen. Subscribe. Share. And never forget, Allah never sleeps, and He never forgets.